Hi everyone, thanks for watching along today. This is going to be a talk about AI and about how its role in the workplace is changing as our own role in the workplace is changing alongside it as well. And hopefully you're going to end the talk today feeling optimistic about those roles, feeling a little bit more comfortable about that world that we're stepping into, and moving forward with a little bit more confidence about the skills that you need to be thinking about developing as we move into the future. So to get things started, I think it would be very understandable if you had some uncertainty about AI at this moment. And to be honest, I think it's probably a pretty healthy reaction to have at this point in time. I think we can all agree that the world is kind of a very strange place right now when it comes to AI. And just to illustrate that, I've got this example here that the pace of AI development in the last few years has really kind of vastly accelerated, exceeding almost everyone's expectations. A few years ago, if we wanted to have an intelligent conversation, we'd have no other option than to talk to a human. But now, we can have conversations about philosophy, about relationships, about our work that we're doing, basically with a piece of silicone that is halfway across the world running ChatGPT for us. And I know it probably all feels like normal already to everyone, but I think it really is worth taking a step back and thinking how revolutionary that is, especially in comparison to where we've been in the last, even 4 years ago, that would have been a kind of crazy sentence to say. And I think although, most people don't really classify it as having full human level intelligence yet, it really has been making quite big steps towards that. And just to exemplify that, I've got on the slide here, Metaculus which is a crowdsourced prediction platform. Basically, they estimate that general intelligence, which could kind of basically do any cognitive work that a human can do, is going to arrive, according to their predictions, on the 28th of May, 2032, which, to put it in perspective, is about 50 years sooner than where everyone thought it was going to arrive when we were thinking about predictions made before 2021. And I think, at least partly because that progress and that change in expectations has been so quick, it has caused some concern for some people. And probably for lots of you in the audience, you will have concerns as well. And I think, you should probably have some concerns because, making artificial life forms, which is what AI basically is probably a pretty tricky thing to get right on your first attempt, and dealing with all the implications that entails. And one of those implications, or one of those things that you might have heard people talk about, you might have thought about yourself, is about how AI is kind of taking on more and more of what I'm calling here as traditional skills. And by traditional skills, I kind of mean things that we have been training to do in our workplaces, the kind of skills that benefit us, allow us to complete tasks, do the work that we do, the things that we go to school to learn. AI is taking on more and more of those tasks, developing more and more of those skills, and doing those jobs that previously we would have had to do ourselves. And if you hang around with any computer science people, then you might have heard them say something like this. And I think this is quite a relatable sentiment for a lot of us in white-collar work, especially I think for young graduates just getting into the world of work and kind of seeing ChatGPT suddenly able to do the things that they've been in school, university, training to do, seeing how well it performs and how intelligent it can be. That is kind of extremely jarring for some people, especially in that position. And just to stick with the computer science subjects for a second, I think even if they're not perfect, the models are getting better and better. This is the worst that the models will ever be. And they're already able to kind of write fairly advanced code and take on some complex situations. So if you look, for example, on this slide here, there's a table for a benchmark called SWE-bench, or Software Engineering Benchmark, which basically measures what percentage of GitHub tickets these different models are able to resolve without any human interaction. And even if 31% doesn't sound particularly exciting for a lead model, humans have been able to solve 100% of those tickets. That is still nearly a third of these really quite complex problems being solved by a machine. just a machine. And it's not just coding as well. Things like Stable Diffusion or Midjourney, they're able to create art at levels that very few human, actual people would be able to accomplish. This on the board here is just one of thousands of examples of really incredible stuff that people have been making with Midjourney. It's not just art and paintings, it's also things like product design. You can use these image generators to create concepts and ideas and designs for products that would otherwise take a huge amount of time and effort and skill to mock up if you were doing them just by hand. And there's even people as well who've set up entire virtual companies. This diagram here is from something called ChatDev, which is basically a tiny virtual software development company in which every role in the company, from CEO to programmers to quality assurance testers, they're all played by a different instance of ChatGPT. And the software that it's capable of making right now still isn't very advanced, but the proof of concept is there, essentially, that AI models have the potential to play almost every role within a digital business, at least within that kind of isolated environment. So you might be feeling some level of anxiety after seeing all of those examples. Even if you're a CEO, you might be thinking that your job isn't safe. And I think it's likely that there will be some changes to the way that work is done in the future, probably in some ways that are going to be hard to predict at this point in time. But humans, quite simply, I would like to say, aren't going away. We're always going to be here, always going to be the ones living in society. AI can't live our lives for us. And I think there are some really exciting new things that people will end up doing in the future, even if AI is able to do more and more tasks for us. I think probably having AI take over some of those tasks, some of those aspects of the work that you're doing right now, probably your initial reaction to it is going to be making you feel powerless. But I think actually in a lot of ways you'll be getting a lot more power. And I think as humans get more and more power from having the extension of their capabilities through these models, I want to argue is that we're going to see humans more and more as the kind of executives in the system. We'll start taking on higher level decision-making roles now that we have those tools doing the legwork for us. And I think as part of that transition in our roles, we're going to see some skills become more and more valuable as we move into the future. But before we get into that exactly, why am I saying this? Why are we going to become executives all of a sudden? I think the simple reason to try and convince you of this is that AI doesn't really do anything unless you tell it to. Even if we have totally autonomous agents, AI doesn't actually have any intrinsic motivations or desires. But there are, as I said, always going to be these humans around who do have a lot of intrinsic motivations and do have a lot of desires. And there's always going to be people wanting to do stuff. There's always going to be people wanting to tell their AIs what to do, and they want to be there to press that go button. And I think the benefit of this to you is that actually having the initiative to press that go button is going to be something that's quite valuable to have. In a way, it's going to be a skill that AI is going to have the most trouble replicating. And I think having the initiative to actually do things is going to benefit you more in 2024 than it would have ever benefited you before. And the reason why I say this is because you're going to be able to have a lot more impact by taking the initiative than you would have if you were working without any AI tooling or any AI assistance. Even thinking about the AI models that we have already, you can still accomplish quite a lot with them. It can help you code in languages that you don't know. It can make images for you, even if you don't know how to paint, use Photoshop, Illustrator, any of those. It can give you ideas that you might never have had. It's very general in its applications, and there will be a lot of people watching along today that will have at least some application of AI in what they're doing already, even if you might not have worked it out yet. But I think AI in the future is going to be even more capable. It's going to extend your reach even further. And as AI is able to take on more and more of the actual execution of the tasks in your work life, as it's producing better and better outputs, the value of starting that work is going to increase. I think already, the impact of turning on your laptop at the beginning of the day every day is more now than it was 2 to 3 years ago. And if you look forward to 2 or 3 years in the future, I think that's going to be worth even more again. And similarly, as well, as AI starts to become more capable, it's also going to take you less time, it's going to take you less money, and it's going to take you less effort to do things. And so the cost of taking that initiative is going to decrease. The amount of time that it's going to take you to write a line of code, to put together a PowerPoint presentation, or to come up with an idea, all of those are going to be significantly reduced, and there'll be less cost and less risk in doing things as a result. But the nice thing about that is that the value that it's going to bring your end users is often still going to be the same. So if you're using AI to speed up your work, as long as the quality of the end product is the same or better, all your audience is going to know is that you were able to deliver something of value to them. And hopefully you will have been able to do that better and faster than you would have done previously. So let's say you've mastered taking the initiative and you want to start taking advantage of some of that magnification of your productivity. What else do you need? So let's say for this purpose, the initiative is, broadly speaking, making things happen. I'm going to argue that that's not still quite enough. That's not quite everything you're going to need to succeed, because even if you're making things happen, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're actually making anything good or useful in any way. And I think that's an important distinction to make. So I'd like to argue instead that you will also need something that I'm going to call vision. And here I'm going to classify vision as kind of making the right things happen. And basically, you just need to be working on things that people actually like. Even if your productivity is going to go up by a factor of 10, if you're not actually working on things that your users want, something that's useful, something that helps them in their work, or something that helps them fulfill actual needs that they have, then the result is unfortunately always going to fail. And I think it's kind of more important than ever to be thinking about that value that you're delivering to your stakeholders, regardless of who they are, those end users of what you're producing. Think about the value that you're delivering to them. And I can guarantee you that not everyone is going to be thinking about that. And hopefully that's going to be what differentiates you watching along today from them, because you'll be thinking about making real useful things, while a lot of other people are going to be thinking about making slop. And I really do believe that slop is going to be a strong feature of the AI era. And if you've not heard the term before, AI slop is basically low value AI generated content. And often it can be so bad that it can actually give AI content a bad name and make people really dislike it. I feel like this image here I've picked out as an example. I think it's a fairly good example. Visually, in a way, it's quite impressive. It probably would have taken a lot more skill than I have to be able to paint something like that. But if you've ever seen any other futuristic art from DALL-E 3, which is where it came from, then you'll know it all kind of looks exactly like this, really. And they all kind of look a little bit soulless, a little bit generic. It's not really conveying much of anything, doesn't make you feel much of anything. But probably most importantly, it doesn't have a story behind it or a context that it sits in. It was just an image randomly posted on the internet. It got 2 upvotes and then was kind of forgotten forever until I stole it and put it in this presentation. And I think it's important to remember here that, even if the image models are getting better and better and the outputs are all eventually masterpieces, you can still end up making slop if it doesn't have any point to it or any reason for people to find it engaging. And also, to stick with the art theme, some of you might have seen these images floating around on Facebook. I don't think a lot of these reactions are real people. I think a lot of them are bots, but I think quite a few real people do also seem to interact with them. There does seem to be real people in the comments and things like that. I think, to most of us, this is slop because we know that it's not real and that the child didn't actually make a Jesus out of avocados. But to some people, this isn't slop, and it's genuinely engaging content that they find interesting, and maybe it's related to their faith, so they can find some connection in that. And so I included as a reminder that slop can mean different things to different people, and it's all related to what the user wants to get out of it, the value that you're providing your user. And I think a nice way of kind of thinking about this and how to stop yourself from making slop is to think, is what I'm working on actually valuable? Or am I just impressed that a machine has made it? Because we're all familiar with that novelty of AI. It's really interesting to see all these things being produced. But the novelty of AI is going to fade fast. For many of you, it's probably already faded. And I think we really need to try and kind of separate ourselves from the fact that it is cool, it is impressive that machines are able to make this content for us. But we need to separate ourselves from that and think, is this providing value to people intrinsically? Because if it's not, if the only value it's producing is just that it's impressive that it was made, then I think probably you shouldn't be making it. I think another way of thinking about this is that AI has given people the skill to create very technically complex content, but all of a sudden, a lot of the people who are making that content don't necessarily actually understand the fundamentals that are needed to understand what it is they should be making. So the example I've given here is that you wouldn't let someone with no graphic design experience create your brand identity, even if they had AI tools that allowed them to do that. If this person doesn't have good judgment, if they don't understand the context of what they're making, then it's still going to be a low quality output, even if an amazing AI tool has made it. Part of what we pay people for already is their judgment, not necessarily their skill. And I think kind of what we can take from this is that there is that other skill that we need to be thinking about having as AI tools get more advanced. Having that judgment, knowing what to do and why, is a skill that really needs to be practiced and developed like any other. And I think if you look forward to the future, the people who are going to be most successful are going to be the ones who use the power in these AI tools to make the most impactful things. And that probably sounds like a really obvious statement, but I think it really is worth thinking about, because that's going to be what's driving those successful products, those successful ventures. Not even necessarily talking about setting up new businesses, also things like the things that we produce in our work, just the reports that we produce, the code that we produce, the things that we're working on. If we have a good vision for what it is we're making, if it delivers value to the people we're sending it to, then it's going to be successful, and you will be successful as a result. I think this is also, as well, I just wanted to touch on specifically AI features and the AI features that we introduce into our products, because I think the same rules kind of apply here. I think a lot of people panicked when AI suddenly became really capable, and they all kind of scrambled around to try and keep up with the market and include some kind of AI assistance feature, kind of really regardless of what their product actually was. But the truth of this is that a lot of those people weren't really doing that because they had a vision for their product. A lot of people were just primarily doing it because they felt like they had to. I think even worse as well, often a lot of the tools that people made, weren't actually good enough to do what was promised, what they said on the tin. It's still early days for AI. A lot of the models weren't quite there yet. We haven't really worked out the products and the way they fit into those products as well. Also, a lot of the models were deliberately being used at the cheaper option. So GPT 3.5 was being used very frequently, and it just kind of wasn't really up to what it needed to be up to. And as a result, those tools, those AI assistance features, ended up being pretty useless. Either they didn't have a purpose to them to begin with, or just the way they were executed meant that the user kind of had to go through and fix all the AI's mistakes and actually wasted more time trying to get it to work than they saved. I think the reason that that's happened is that those companies that were working on those features, the people making those features, they didn't really have an evidence-based vision of the value that they were delivering to anyone with those tools. So how can you avoid falling into that trap? Maybe you're thinking about introducing AI tools at your place of work as well. Whatever it is you're producing, whether it's for external or internal audiences, I think a great way to approach what you're offering is the jobs to be done framework. I think there's a lot that we could go into around jobs to be done. But basically, you're taking what you know about your end user and you're using that to try and understand why someone would engage with your product, kind of what needs it solves, what jobs they're trying to complete, whether it's a functional job, an emotional job, or a social job, what they want to get out of it, what they want to complete. And jobs to be done is just one of the many frameworks that you can use. But the kind of key point here is that you need to be thinking about your users first and your tools second. Because if you're putting those tools first, you're kind of putting the cart before the horse, and that can lead you down some dangerous paths and let you create some dodgy end products that don't actually fulfill any value. So imagining that we've taken all that on board, we've got initiative, we're making things happen. But not only have we done that, we're also making good things happen because we've got a good vision for what we're working on and we understand what it is we need to be making. But what else do we need? Do we need anything else? I think there probably are lots of qualities that are going to belong to that next generation of successful people using these tools. But I'm going to argue for one in particular. And that skill is communication, getting what you're producing out into the world. And I think it might sound a bit like a kind of soft skill, hard to define, maybe even harder to develop. But I really do think that it's going to be one of the most powerful factors defining the next era of work. And the reason for that really is that even if your idea or whatever it is you're working on is great, you do still need to put it out into the world. It doesn't automatically fly out there for you. It does actually need to make contact with air. And you can produce a beautiful piece of art, an amazing piece of code, a great presentation about the future of AI, and then just leave it in the window of your ChatGPT browser. Unless you take it out there, deploy it into a system that involves humans, nothing's gonna happen as a result. And I should add, just to unpack this a little bit, that as part of that communication, we can also include a few different ways to deploy whatever it is you're working on out into the world. Things like how to publish what you're working on to engage people and to get attention from them, how to execute the code that you've written and to integrate it into the systems that it belongs in, or even things in a more mundane way of just getting people on board with your ideas and getting the buy-in to support them. And like I've been saying, those ideas and those things that you produce, they don't live in a vacuum. And often you're going to need to convince people to get on board with them to sort of go along that journey with you. And that is something that you are going to need to have a role in as the owner of what it is that you're producing. I think especially where things kind of bridge the gap between the digital world and the real world, you are often going to need to be an ambassador at that crossing. And we don't have an AI solution for this. I'm not sure if we ever will. People aren't going to want to watch an AI give a PowerPoint presentation. An AI isn't going to attend pitch meetings for you. It's not going to convince your boss to change the roadmap for your team. You are going to need to be that ambassador. You are going to need to be that human being representing these ideas and that content that you've produced with your AI. Also, just to clarify, this wasn't actually written by AI. And there is lots of information out there if you want to be an effective communicator. I'm not going to give you a full masterclass today, but just the top 3 skills that Claude came out with when I asked were active listening, which is making sure that you're taking on board things that other people are saying and deliberately seeking their input. Also, as well, being really clear and concise with how you're expressing yourself. Making sure you're not overloading people, making sure things are simple for the other humans in the room. But also as well, making sure that you have empathy, not just in terms of people's emotions, but really trying to understand their perspectives, where they're coming from, and what they want. And I've edited Claude's response here for brevity. But one thing about the current generation of AI tools and the way that they fit into society is that they really aren't the ones doing the communicating. You are going to need to be that representative of the work that you're producing as a team with your AI. And you're going to need to draw on those communication skills in exactly the same way that you have to do for the work that you produce yourself. So looking back at this slide, I think these really are going to be the big skills that humans are going to benefit from in the next few years. Hopefully you've started thinking about the ways that you might employ these in your own work. It's okay if it still feels a little bit bewildering. There is lots of uncertainty around what the world of work is going to look like over the next few years. But I think, as I said, what is certain is that humans aren't going away. They're going to want to produce things. I think the people who really put themselves out there, who have that good vision of what it is they want to achieve, and they're able to communicate and deploy things, whatever it is they're producing, effectively. I really do think those are going to be the most successful humans as we move into the future. And I think really a lot of these skills are already what define a lot of the people who are doing really great work today. But I think they're going to become more and more important as the work that we do becomes more powerful. So hopefully this has made some kind of sense to you, and that you're looking forward to working with your AI colleagues in the future. I do think it is a very uncertain time to be alive, but it is also a really interesting one. And I think we're all about to have a lot more power to create a lot more things in the future. So hopefully we all find ourselves working on really interesting things and things that are really useful for people. And that's it. That's everything I have to say. So thank you very much for listening along today. I really appreciate your time. If you do want to get in touch to discuss anything that you're working on, or if you just want to have a chat about AI, then I'm definitely ready for that. So just let me know. You can add me on LinkedIn. My name's just there. And get in touch. Thanks for listening. So.